My son is named Roz, and he's 3 years old. He was diagnosed with hereditary spastic paraplegia. When he was like maybe about 2.5, it was a misdiagnosis of cerebral palsy, and then we did an MRI to confirm a CP diagnosis, and his MRI came back clean, or typical, and then we did genetic testing. It confirmed the diagnosis of hereditary spastic paraplegia. It does not run in our family, so it's just like a totally sort of what they call de novo genetic mutation, and the reason we sought out medical care, his early babyhood, 0 to 6 months, he appeared, totally typically developing. He babbled and was smiley and cute and playful and reached for things. He sat up sort of at a typical time. And then as he started to near the year mark, we noticed that he wasn't crawling or really using his legs. And then, we could put him at a table or a chair, and he would hold on and he would stand, but he couldn't pull himself up to stand. So we started with, getting him evaluated by early intervention and all that stuff, and that's kind of how the whole journey with, his diagnosis. We would go to doctors and we would go to therapists, and they were really good at sort of pointing out what was wrong or what the problem was, but there wasn't, it's hard to find someone who's sort of like forward-oriented and long-term oriented. Yeah, I think one of the biggest concerns is when you receive a diagnosis that's very rare, and you go to doctors and there's no sort of apparent reason as to why things should be wrong, you get a lot of shoulder shrugs, a lot of let's wait and see. It's really hard to find care that incorporates like a feeling and a sense of hope and a sense of empowerment for, I can only speak to my experience. So for my kid, it just felt like we would go to doctors and we would go to therapists, and they were really good at sort of pointing out what was wrong or what the problem was, but there wasn't, it's hard to find someone who's sort of like forward-oriented and long-term oriented. And so I think what attracts me to, one of the things that attracted me to coming to Breakthrough is just, it's a very empowering place, I think, for both patients, for clients, but also for families. It's like maybe a year and a half ago, something like that, I don't have time. And I just noticed when we first came here, we weren't doing the intensive, we were just doing isolated sessions, but when we would come, he would sort of, every time we would come home, he would like try something new, or he'd be more willing to take a risk or experiment with something. And with this intensive, we're sort of coming toward the ends of the 3 weeks, and he's already stronger. He's, he already has, I think the strength is the most marked thing, that he's already able to like pull up to stand much faster and with much more coordination than he could before. He seems like a lot more confident when we're just out and about. He's walking around with his walker, and just, he was using a walker before the intensive, but as we've been going through the intensive, he's been like standing up straighter, and he like literally looks taller. And yeah, so I think it's just the strength building and the confidence building. From the very first conversation that I had with Monique, who I randomly called her up and she just spent like an hour on the phone with me. I was just a person, and it was like, I felt like really she was the first person to really listen to me and to just sort of like help me think about the big picture of like what having a child or a loved one with a diagnosis means and what you do, right? Because there's no roadmap. When your child or your loved one receives a diagnosis, it doesn't come with an instruction manual. And so much of navigating it has to do with figuring out what the path forward is, right? And that can look really different for each person depending on, what their challenges and what their diagnosis is. And I think this was the first place that it doesn't like see a person in isolation. It doesn't see a person as their disability or as their diagnosis. Like, it was the first place where we came and it felt like, oh, Roz is a person who has a diagnosis, but he also he has a family and a sibling and, his parents and his extended family. And when we come here, it's like, you can show up with an entourage and it's totally fine. One of the main things is like when I first came here, I think, the cost of each session was a lot for me to process the financial cost. And I think special needs families spend so much money and on different treatments and, it can be very costly. And I think it was hard for me to reconcile that it's a certain amount of money that felt like a lot to me, but that you are getting a lot. And also just to know that they will work with you in terms of your insurance and trying to get things covered where it might not be apparent that something would be covered. And I think I came in just sort of thinking, oh, my insurance would never cover this. And then, Breakthrough helped me gather documents and materials to submit to insurance, and they ended up approving it. And I didn't think that I had already in my head thought, oh, they'll never approve this. I think one of the biggest differences about this place is that there are plenty of places that provide great therapy and great treatment for people with disabilities and challenges of all kinds. But this is a place where I come and where my family comes and we feel a part of the treatment, right? Because it's it's about us feeling empowered and able to care and able to feel integrated into what Roz is navigating for his personal, treatment plan and disability, but it's also about us feeling empowered as his family and as his community. And so, this is a place where if you come as a parent or as a caregiver, that you will be supported too. And that is just as important as, your loved one being supported. And I would say, if you feel good and you feel empowered, then that will only allow you to be that much better of a support and a caregiver to your child or your loved one. There's a lot of great snacks. They like to have fun here. They're total goofballs and funny. They just love having fun. Yeah, you work, the clients here work hard. And one of the sort of unexpected or really sweet surprises is that I have a young child, he's 3 and he's here, but there's a lot of adults who come in who are getting treatment or therapy, and the connection between the adults and the kids is something that's really, really special. And you don't get that a lot of other places because it's usually separate adults, pediatrics. So that's really fun. And yeah, just it's fun. There's great snacks. Chance, the dog, is awesome. And it's just fun to be here. I think, I spoke to like just the holistic approach to care and seeing a person not as their diagnosis, but seeing a person as a person with a family and a community, and how that fits into helping them navigate whatever challenges they have that require them to receive physical therapy.